In this video, we're going to be breaking down the forehand of Jasmine Paolini to help you to get more out of your forehand. Now, there are a couple of reasons why I'm using Jasmine Paolini's forehand as an example. Number one, she actually does something quite interesting at the back of her forehand, which could either help or hinder your forehand. But more importantly, in case you didn't know, Jasmine is only 5'4" and has one of the heaviest forehands on the WTA Tour, and so clearly does some great things when it comes to her mechanics to help her to maximize the racket head speed that she can generate. Now, before getting into the mechanics of Jasmine's forehand, I need to mention that if you've seen her play before, you'll know that she's one of the best movers on the WTA Tour. She's incredibly quick and agile and always looks super balanced on each shot. So clearly that makes a big impact to how she hits her forehand. But in this video, we're going to be talking more about the actual mechanics of her forehand, as I'm sure you'll find it interesting. Now, although Jasmine is small in stature, she has incredible racket head speed. And the way that she uses that racket head speed is to generate incredible amounts of topspin on her forehand. However, if you're a flatter hitter, you can still relate these teaching points into your game, as we're going to be talking about how she generates that racket head speed. The differences for you, if you're a flatter player, may be your grip and your swing path. Now, talking about grips, Jasmine is pretty close to a full Western grip on her forehand. Just looking at these forehands, you'll see that her index finger knuckle is pretty much on the bottom bevel of her grip. Now, you do see this a lot in players that are slightly shorter or players that grow up playing on the clay, as they're often dealing with balls that are bouncing up to shoulder height or higher. And this grip really allows you to deal well with those higher contact points, but also allows you to get tons and tons of topspin. Now, this is one thing from Jasmine's forehand that I wouldn't recommend for everybody. It really does depend on your game style and your physicality, but it's something that works well for Jasmine due to her height and due to her heavy topspin game style. Now, the first thing that you should take from Jasmine's forehand is the way that she uses her kinetic chain, which you've heard me talk about before. Now, when we're talking about the kinetic chain, we're talking about linking all of your body parts together to get the most out of your shot. Now, for Jasmine, she does this by creating a really wide base between her 2 feet. And what this does is it allows her to be balanced and it allows her to get low, loading her legs, ready to drive into the ball. Now, you'll see on every forehand that she hits, she initiates that racket head speed, starting with the ground and moving up through her body. Starting in that low position, she'll use her legs to drive up and forwards, firing her back hip into the court. You'll see that this back hip fires ever so slightly before the racket comes through. This disconnection between her lower body and her upper body creates a slight lag of the racket head, which in turn allows her to generate more racket head speed. Now, this is the same no matter what stance she's in, whether she's stepping in a neutral stance or what some of you might know as a closed stance. That back leg will drive the hip first before the racket comes through. But equally, if she's in a semi-open stance or an open stance, again, it's this right leg that drives the hip, lags the racket, creating that whip effect. And so when it comes to your forehand, whether you're a heavy topspin player or a flat hitter and you're looking for more racket head speed, it starts with the legs traveling up through your bigger muscle groups using your hips and your torso before being released through your arm. Now, yes, when you see pro tennis players hitting their forehands, you will see some wrist movement, but it's important to note that we're not generating power using the wrist. The generation of power is through those bigger muscle groups, but the wrist is loose, allowing all of that power to be released through the wrist, through the racket and into the ball. Now, that first point is true of all professional tennis players, and I'm sure you've heard it before, but the second point is more unique to Jasmine and a few other players, and it's with regards to the way that she prepares her racket on her backswing. What you'll notice is she turns her strings away from the court. You'll actually see players like Jannik Sinner do this slightly on their forehands as well.
Jannik, this is Ashley, by the way.
Yes, I saw you on YouTube, I guess. Yeah. He's more famous than I am.
Now, this is actually something that I don't recommend for everybody. By all means, give it a try, see how it goes, but it does create some downsides. The reason Jasmine turns her strings away from the court is it's another way to help you to generate more racket head speed. Now, a simple scientific formula for speed is distance over time. And if you imagine this backswing that's pointing to the back fence, it has to travel a bigger distance to get to the ball than it would if I were here. Meaning that because the racket has to travel over a bigger distance over the same amount of time, the racket travels quicker. Now, if you link it to the initial point that I made about Jasmine's hips firing through first and the racket lagging behind, this creates even more racket lag and in turn, more racket head speed. Now, the reason I don't recommend this to most players is because the racket has to travel over a bigger distance before it reaches the ball, there's a lot more that can go wrong. It's much harder for you to find your ideal contact point when your racket has to cover so much ground before reaching the ball. But the reason Jasmine can get away with this is one, she's done it for many years. Number two, she's actually got quite a compact swing when comparing to other players on the WTA Tour, which saves her time. And number three, she prepares super early, giving her time to feel super balanced through the strike. Now, when it comes to racket head speed, there are different ways that you can do it. Jasmine has a fairly compact swing, but gets that racket to travel further through turning her forearm. Whereas other players may prefer to have their strings more downwards, but they may take their racket further behind them to create that lag. Either way, a bigger swing can help you to generate more racket head speed. However, it's more difficult to control. More often than not, I actually teach players to bring their swing size down slightly. I prefer a slightly more compact swing as there's far less that can go wrong. And generating racket speed through your legs and your torso, the kinetic chain that I mentioned earlier, is going to be a far more secure way of developing that racket head speed as opposed to messing around with different backswings.
Sorry to jump in, but if you haven't got your hands on one of my tennis training decks yet, then you're missing out. I've put together all of my favorite training drills and focus cues to help you to get the most out of your training sessions. And I'm proud to say that although the deck has only been out for a couple of months, it's been sold in 55 different countries. And so far, the feedback from enthusiastic players and coaches is incredible. I'm pleased to say that worldwide shipping is now available. And so if you want to get your hands on the tennis training deck, I've put the link in the description below. Back to the video.
The third point that helps Jasmine to hit her forehand with as much spin and speed as she does is the fact that her contact point generally is right out away from her body. You'll see that she's nearly fully extended every time she hits that forehand. Now, for Jasmine at 5'4", she wants to make the most out of her levers. Now, I will say you do see some players that do like to have their contact point with a bent elbow. It does depend on grips and game styles. However, hitting with a more extended contact point increases the length of your levers, which in turn gets the racket to travel faster. The further away from my center mass the tip of my racket is, the faster it will move. If I swing here versus swinging here, it makes a big difference. Now, you've heard me say this before, but the moral of this video is that you shouldn't copy everything that professional tennis players do. Every human is unique, and the same goes for tennis players, which is why every single pro hits differently. But hopefully there was one or maybe even two things from this video that you can take into your own game. And if you want to take a recommendation for me, it would be to work on the fluency of your kinetic chain. Try to work on getting your feet prepared nice and early with your base wide, allowing you to really use your legs and your torso to fire that racket through. Have a think about the size of your swing, but don't mess around too much with this stuff. It might be fun to experiment next time you're on the practice court, but remember that there are specific reasons why Jasmine hits in the way that she does. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this format of video. I'm hoping to make more and more videos based around pro player analysis. And so if you have any pro players that you'd like me to look at, drop them in the comments below. Thanks as always for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.